Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our live stream. My name is Rachel Lutz. I'm the Director of Solution Engineering here at OvalEdge, and I'm joined by my CEO, Sharad Varshni.
Hello,
And
everyone.
we are going to talk about how do you ensure data privacy compliance. So this is something that Sharad and I hear a lot about and are really proactive about, helping our clients understand you have data privacy issues and worries, and you have certain compliance laws and standards that you need to adhere to. Where do you begin? What laws are out there? And really, what is your responsibility as a company to ensure this compliance standards? So, Sharad, I think that'd be a great place to start at just understanding, what privacy compliance laws are out there. What do people need to be aware of to ensure that they're compliant under?
It's a very first question, and I have seen that a lot of people start implementing the data privacy features and functionality, but don't know the law or the laws.
Right.
And so the laws are generally governed by different countries and different regions. Right? That something is there universally. So the first started by European Union. They came up with the GDPR, General Data Protection Law, and then after that, there is a lot of other countries like UAE also have general data protection law. The Philippines have it their own, and in US there is no federal law. There are multiple variety of privacy laws are there. California have a similar type of law which is like GDPR, but in US also there is a federal government laws are there which is only applied to federal government. That's one law. And also there is a for HIPAA, which is basically only considered for healthcare companies like doctors, etc. They have the privacy law as well. So there's no federal law just like in European, but there are different variety of laws and different kind of like HIPAA industries for healthcare industry. Banking do not have a privacy law, but they do have a kind of a generic law about data governance in general, which is we started about 2008 financial crisis. So, but the privacy laws are there, which is mostly GDPR, CCPA, HIPAA, and federal government, and those are the different laws to start.
Got it. So it sounds like there's regional laws people need to be aware of, or industry-specific laws that people should be aware of, right? Like the banking or healthcare laws. And then there's those more overarching, probably applying to many companies, right? Like GDPR, it covers the EU, regardless of the type of company it is, or?
Yes. So they, again, when they started the law, they wrote the law for everybody, but they are enforcing it mostly for very large company and the mid-sized to small companies. Like I don't think they are implementing at the restaurant level or at that level yet, but the law applies to everybody equally. But enforcement is mostly, at this time, they are fined like Marriott, they are fined Google, they are fined Facebook, they're fining like all the large corporation quite a bit. They haven't fined any small company yet, but there are a lot of fine which is there from like the large companies level, and the fine is pretty high. It goes up to 4% of the revenue. So if your revenue is $400 billion, you're subject to $4 billion in fine, but not following the practices.
Yeah, I mean that's very substantial, right? So, Sharad, for these companies that have been fined, what are some of the fundamentals of these laws that they're not complying to, right? So there's these laws in place, but what are they actually requiring companies to do? So why would Google get fined, right? What did they not do?
So the data privacy laws are pretty stringent. Like they have a specific requirement. You have to make sure they're doing it. At the heart of it, if you see the requirements of the law, the first law is that make sure that there is a data protection officer involved. So I think that is given that mostly in the financial crisis, all the things roll up to the CEO, and it becomes difficult to always prosecute CEOs for everything. So they basically have created something like everybody have to appoint a data protection officer or something at a large amount of pay level, so that he or she is responsible for ensuring that the companies go and manage the law, right? So because they still feel this is company level, they still is civil law. It doesn't have any like jail time or anything. So this is not that. This is mostly the penalties are there, which is very substantial.
Right.
So right, so that is the one area of this. Then the idea about the law in general, the concept is, if I am giving you my data as an individual to do certain thing, I as a consumer have a right on that data. So if you are selling the data, let me know and ask my permission. It is my data, right? If you are, if I want to delete the data on your system, I have a right. If I want to take my data away from you and give it to somebody else, it's my right. So it's very, the fundamentals are it's very noble, basically. It basically say, if it's not a company's property, it is an individual who is giving the right of their system. So for example, if I'm operating Google Map, and Google is collecting the map information and they are collecting individual tracking mechanism, first, they should have a permission to track. B, if they're tracking it, then they need to let everybody know that I'm tracking you, at least individual know I'm tracking you. And then if I want to delete it, I should have a right to delete it.
Right.
So like the recent fine, it was there that they set up the settings that, that you can track me, but somewhere they press it one place, but another configuration actually allow it to do it. So I said, no ambiguity should be there. If I say don't track me at one place, it should say it, not, oh, you configured at the home level, not at this level. So they don't want any confusion. So if I say do not track me, it's making me simple as well. So keep me simple to configure. And so that is the very foundational level of understanding this.
So I like that example because I think it makes it personal. I remember, using Google Maps for the first time. I used to be an Apple Maps user. I'm trying to switch over to the Google Maps. And I remember I got an email at the end of one month and it was like, look at all the places you visited, right? And it had all of the different places I went. And I didn't remember ever saying, oh yeah, track my information, but I must have, right? They ask your permission. So in this case, Sharad, if I've given them permission to track my data, but then I change my mind and say they're compliant under one of these standards, could I say, hey, actually don't track it. I want to know what you do have, the list of all the places Rachel's been, and I can ask them to get rid of that? Is that how it works?
Yes. And this process have to be super simple. So every organization who is collecting the data in European Union should not only have ask the permission, and sometimes you have given the permission as a form of, okay, I'm submitting, etc., but they're asking you to exclusively ask the permission. But even though you have given the permission one time during the registration process, after that, there should be a simple enough form to you fill it up, and they should be able to give you that information, or if you ask to delete, they should be able to delete that information as a company.
Do you find that is a simple process? So you said that companies that are compliant under these standards, they should give an easy way, like a downloadable form off a website or something like that to make that request? Or how do individuals or companies request of companies to say, hey, go ahead and get rid?
It should be a form in the organization basically asking that, okay, I should have a form so that you can say, hey, do not track my information, or it can be that, or you can have a button on your app or something where you can very easily go to that button and say, okay, give me all my information, delete my information, whatever the way company want to operate, whether it's like a large company like Facebook, etc., they have created within the app system. Companies like who are a generic company like hospital, for example, they're collecting a lot of information around you, but they say, okay, you fill up this form and then we will give you that information. They have to 7 days to delete or give you that information back. 7 or 30, I don't remember exactly. But I think in California, there's 30 days. I think in the European Union, 7 days. Something confusion is there.
Okay, so there's a window that a company has to then operate within. So I request people, hey, get rid of my data. They have, N number of days. And then if they don't by that date, they risk.
Then they risk of basically they defaulted. They're subject to penalty. If I reported this to the regulators, if I am a consumer, the company might get penalty.
Hmm.
Now, obviously, the regulator will see how big the company is, whether you should fine it or not.
Do you know, is there typically like a audit schedule? So I'm Google and I'm compliant under GDPR. Does the data protection officer know when these audits are coming, or is it, subject to every time there's a request, they need to be able to respond?
So mostly the law, like for example, you might have operated in the you might have filed the taxes, right?
Right.
So its audit comes once in a while. It's up to them to figure out whether you feel like there is maybe some some problem might be there. They might give you the audit. So it's up to the regulators prerogative that whether they want to give you the audit or not. But when you are applying the filing your taxes, you want to make sure everything is right. If audit comes up, like say you are using TurboTax or something, they will maintain all the records of it. So
Right.
you can give all the records. So the data protection officer's job is to ensure if audit happens, then they have all the information there. So they should have then those are the various checklists for auditors to kind of make sure that you are following the law, and that's going to be the next
Right.
conversation we can have.
Mm-hmm. So I'm thinking about, companies being able to respond to these requests. Are these compliance standards new? And do you think that the industry has a good understanding at what they're responsible to do? Have these laws been around long enough where you think this is a process people can, comply to easily, or do you think it's still a struggle for most
It's
companies?
still it's a quite a bit struggle to implement these processes. The first thing is that HIPAA law is pretty old,
Mhm.
and mostly I have seen in healthcare companies they have a pretty stringent process to take care of the HIPAA because it's been pretty old. Especially GDPR, CCPA, these are comparatively new laws. I think I am not sure, it's been 7 years or something.
Okay.
These laws are there. Again, during the pandemic, they went a little bit low. The regulators were not fining, but now they're coming up. They have started fining again, right? It's up to the regulators also want to make sure that they get money as well. The government get money. So the laws are there, and implementation is quite a bit processes there. As much as the big organization you have, as much as the data you are using to make sure for your data, for your, like for example, Amazon use data across the company, various places. So their processes have to be more complex than a restaurant owner, because even though he's collecting the data, all the data goes to his CRM system or a billing system, and that's the only place he have. So if somebody asks you, okay, here is a billing system, I can give
Right.
you.
That makes sense. I mean, I have to imagine for these large organizations, if I were to ask, to use my right to be forgotten, right? Hey, I want to know all the data you have on me under this law, and I'd like you to get rid of it. These large companies with, tech stacks that are just so vast, they're going to have to search many different systems and require many different people likely to try and find where that information is at, right? I'm assuming people get fined often just from the vast amount of data they have to search through to find just my record, right?
That is the main issue. Companies forget it. So if you ask them, hey, ask the CEO that maybe a large company, hey, we need to implement GDPR law. They will say, oh, okay, we this is in our CRM system. Go ahead and get rid of the CRM system. And then suddenly customer asked him, and then suddenly the email came from the marketing campaign somewhere, and it's like, oh, like how did this email came? Because I thought you get rid of my data, and how come the email you send it to me?
Right.
That is where they started getting the penalties, and there's they started getting investigation, and then they can find out, they can audit, and when the customer audit, you have to showcase
Right.
which law, like where the data, PII data, they call it PII, personal identifiable information,
Right.
where this is, where it come from. So you have to track everything internally. So internal processes are pretty complex.
Right.
For customers, it's very simple. I should be able to ask it, I should be able to delete it. They made it simple. Internally, they made it quite a bit a step-by-step process.
Right.
For internal.
So that's actually something I'm going to share my screen. This is something that we've created to help, those listening in. If you're someone that does need to ensure that your company is compliant, we've actually created a white paper. You can find it on our website here in this Learn White Papers section. And it's called How to Ensure Data Privacy and Compliance with OvalEdge. And this will really help you understand, holistically, what am I responsible to do and how do I start to implement this data privacy compliance within my organization. So again, that's on our website, right in our Learn section in the white papers. You can download it. You'll be asked to put in, your name, email, and in your company name, and then you'll be off running and get to use this resource that's, really, really hoping would be helpful for you guys. So that's also something, Sharad, I think that people could get a lot of value out of, right? Being a company, and even if you are compliant under these, but you're struggling, this could give you some more stepwise approach to, how do I really do this in a wise way where I won't get fined, right? How do I actually?
Exactly. Yeah. And the one thing is that I generally say that use this for all the organization, use this opportunity to organize your data nicely, so that if you can, the idea what they're saying is that make sure your PII data is organized, what the law is saying.
Right.
But I say, hey, you are organizing the PII data, then why not you also organize your financial data? Why not you also organize your customer data? Why not you also organize your patient's data, or whatever the business you are in? Just
Right.
organize all the data. That's what we call it, data governance in general. That use this as an opportunity to build a better ecosystem of data in your company, so that more data adoption can happen. This is this is the two ways you can take it. You can say, oh, I want to get rid of penalties, implement just the privacy laws. Or you can say, no, this is an opportunity for me. As I'm organizing a set of things, I will create the policies and standard in a manner that I will be organized every part of it. So
Right.
that's the way to see that as an opportunity, rather than as this is just I have to spend so much money to manage the PII data.
Definitely. And I think we talk to, in my position, often getting to talk to clients of OvalEdge, you'll see people come from both approaches, but one seems more proactive and one seems more reactive, right? And so I like that you're talking about it should start with, just a mind shift around not only going after what I might get fined for, but being proactive at being a better steward of all your data, right? Starting to
Exactly.
organize that and implement a governance strategy.
Yeah,
So
although it gives you a little bit like a different perspective of this, but the the privacy laws only deal with the PII data, right? The personally identifiable information.
right.
But there are laws like banking industry laws, right? They basically ask you that, for example, like all the reporting the financial regulations. No, after 2008 financial crisis, there is a law compliance created called DCBS 239, I think, right? They
Mhm.
created the law that law or guideline, I'm not sure. They say that every bank have to comply with these standards. And the standards are, again, just like how do you manage your PII data? Like you need to maintain the inventory of it, where exactly it is, where it came from, where it goes, who have access to it, who have audited it, those kind of things. The similar to that, the 239, DCBS 239 also have the same thing, but not about the PII, but about the call reports. They call it call records. So that when you are reporting this to your financial institutions, they want to make sure what you are reporting is actually accurate
Right.
all the way to the source system. So the concepts are same across the board. That's why this should be opportunity for you to start thinking around how do you organize your data correctly, so that whether if you like for example, if you go to the Home Depot, they have very nicely done. So whether a contractor goes or a person goes to buy something, they can immediately find something. It's
Right.
nicely cataloged. All this information is available. All the parts are available very quickly to go and buy stuff from this.
Right.
Right? If you go to your garage, it's hard to find sometimes, right? Although very little information is there. So basically the idea is convert your garage into kind of a organize everything correctly, so that if I want to buy it for A reason or B reason or C reason, or contractor want to buy it or want to buy in high quality or low quantity, you have a process established for everything. That's the main objective of organizing of your data.
Right. Right. So, and that's something I think OvalEdge does really well. So we'll get to see that here in a
Yes.
minute. Sharad, if someone weren't to have a tool like OvalEdge, to help them implement this strategy, what do clients or companies typically do? Do you think it's all in spreadsheets where they try and track where all that sensitive information is, or how cumbersome is that without a tool meant to help you do that?
So people actually use spreadsheet to start the process. Mostly the organization big enough, they realize that they can't track on a spreadsheet. But I have seen companies starting on a spreadsheet. I have seen product which is look like spreadsheet, frankly speaking. They doesn't have any automation, and they think they're like, okay, you survey everybody and figure out where the data is, where the
Right.
PI data, and then they don't realize that there are millions of attributes is there. You cannot survey millions of attributes into the
Right.
data, though people don't know which PI it is. And this is where I think um, the information of the product like OvalEdge is needed to kind of find out this PII data
Right.
as something I think you want to showcase a little bit product and how does it work. Is it the right time to show now?
Yeah, let's do it. So I'll go ahead and
Yeah.
present my screen. Shrad, I'll just have you confirm when you see the OvalEdge crawler screen,
Mm-hmm.
and then I'll walk us through. You see it?
Wonderful. Yes, I see it.
All right. So for our listeners, I'm sure you've heard of OvalEdge if you're listening in, but if you haven't, OvalEdge is an end-to-end data governance product, and it's very helpful for all of those key pillars of what we consider to be data governance, and data privacy and compliance are definitely one of those pillars, right? So if I'm a company and I'm getting started, like Sharad was saying, you want to have a central repository to be able to catalog all of your information so that you can start to find all of your PII from a central lens, right? So to do that, the first thing clients would do would be to come into OvalEdge and connect to all of the technology in their environment. You'd crawl for metadata, and you could even profile data. When you've done that, all those actions are going to start to build out the data catalog, which acts as that central repository for all of your company's metadata and an insight into the data in those systems. So you can come to the data catalog and very quickly start to search through the data. You can search through based on that data source level, table level, all the way down to the file, report, and table column levels. If I were to do that, I could come to the table columns area and then just say, I want to do a simple search for social security numbers. I can see I have a lot, right, across all different source systems. So if something in the metadata is clearly named, easy. I could then throw a privacy rule on there, and I'll show you how you throw privacy rules on there. But say your metadata isn't named logically, right? And you don't know how to find the sensitive information. How do you start to go about doing that? That's something OvalEdge has thought of. So a part of our product, it being an end-to-end data governance tool, is that the data catalog is that basis of the platform, but then there's also a built-in business glossary where you'll have a privacy domain, where in the privacy domain, you're going to be able to list out all of those compliant fields that those laws require you to know where they're at and then be able to protect. Some of those fields are going to be those things that people ask, hey, I'd like you to tell me everywhere my email is and get rid of it, right? OvalEdge is going to help you do that really simply. But say we take something like a social security number. Both internal company policy would want to protect those values, and then you're also compliant to make sure those values are protected under those laws. So in OvalEdge, you have business glossary terms that are a part of a domain. So we're in our privacy domain, and we've created a term called social security number. You're able to give it a description. You're able to set what classification standards are applicable for this term. In this case, I have CCPA, GDPR, and HIPAA placed on this term. I also have data association rules set up, and this is key, right? The data catalog and the business glossary get to be intermixed, right? So what I set up, the business rules or literacy or privacy that I set up in the glossary can apply to the cataloged information, right? So once I have this set up in OvalEdge, you can associate terms to the cataloged information. So that cataloged information is metadata coming from all of your sources. And you can identify these columns right here from these 4 different sources have been placed and marked with this Social Security term. That brings over the title, the description, as well as that compliance and privacy to the term. Now, how do you find it? How do you find these fields when you don't know where they are or the metadata isn't named accurately or specifically, right? OvalEdge has an AI recommendation engine where you can look at all of your unassociated data as well as run an AI recommendation to look at all the fields across all of your sources that the tool thinks could be a Social Security number. In this case, I ran it before our live, and I found 143 columns, a part of tables, that look like they could be Social Security number. So here, just to ground us, you have the connection it's coming from, so the source from your tech stack that it's coming from. You then have details about the schema, table, column, the metadata on the column type and the title. And then over here, you have a SMART score. The SMART score is an aggregated score based off of the AI looking at the metadata, data, and pattern of that data. And it's telling you, hey, this is the likelihood that this field, this column, contains a Social Security number. You can then hover over top values to confirm. And if it is, you click thumbs up. And if it isn't, you click thumbs down. OvalEdge will learn from that interaction. But when you click thumbs up, that adds it to the associated data dictionary. And if I go look at one of those columns, if I click on the column, it'll prompt me to be able to open it in the data catalog so I can see I'm part of my Snowflake hospital schema in my employee copy table. And I have a privacy term applied, which carries over that privacy rule, and my values are now masked. I see a question here in the chat, so I'll pause to take this question and then we'll look at some more features in OvalEdge about how do you start to look outside of just privacy, but to that compliance piece to answer right to be forgotten or help auditors out. But before we get there, I see a question. I'll go ahead and put it on the screen for us, Sharad. But it says, what is the difference between right to access and right to portability? Would you like to answer that?
This is a very good question. So right to access means that I have a right, like if I give my data to a company, I have a right to access the data. If I ask you to give me data, I should be able to do it. Right to portability is coming up new, basically. The idea is that, hey, I'm moving my shopping system from Amazon to Walmart. And why Amazon was so good at giving me all the recommendation, because it have all my history. So, by the way, give me all my history. I will port it to Walmart, so that Walmart will be also able to do the same kind of recommendation based on my experience, my thing, right? Like if I have all the pictures in Facebook, if I move this Facebook to say Google something, then they should be able to take that information and take it. So give me the information in an open format so that I can give it to my customer, right? And in a standard format. Don't give me a file which nobody can open it. So that's what the right of portability means. You have a right, but also in an open format. Generally, XMLs, JSON, they are very open format, so people can understand the data from it. Don't give me in a proprietary format where only my software can open it.
Got it.
That is the main idea.
Awesome. Yeah. Great question and great answer. So I'll go ahead and take that off. And
yeah.
then go ahead.
Yeah, so I think that as you show that this data catalog, which is basically protecting the data in data catalog, can we also protect this data in suppose what happens that if I'm going to the Snowflake and I can go and see the data. So although in data catalog it's masked, but can I carry forward these policies into Snowflake, for example, or any other system?
You definitely can. So with OvalEdge, there is that two-way capability for select systems. OvalEdge supports Snowflake right now. It supports Redshift as well as the Delta Lake with Databricks. And so I'll show you an example of that, right? So say I've found sensitive information. To send it back to that source system, that's going to be a governance catalog feature called Govern Data Query, right? this is going to be one example of how you send it back, right? This is going to take a look. It's going to double dip here and look at someone requests, hey, I want you to find my information and I want you to protect it and I want you to get rid of it. This feature will help us identify and identify those records as well as allow us to protect back. So with the governed data query, this is a no-code application in OvalEdge. So we were trying to make it really easy for users to adapt to this, to be able to answer these questions. So we're lowering that barrier to entry to be able to do technical things, right? But what a governed data query is you get to come in here and add an entry. You're giving a name, selecting the domain of data it's going to run against, and identifying a steward. So someone responsible to take care of these records when found. You then get to create that query statement in here by saying configure terms. This will open up this dialog box where you have 4 rows, and you could add here if you needed to, but it's and or statements. So right now I have first name is equal to, last name is equal to, or social security is equal to. If you wanted to do an and statement, you just build this way instead of this way, right? But I've set up the criteria for the data I want to search for, right? I get to click into that and then add my specific entries. I'll just note now this is synthetic data. These are not real social security numbers, so we're being compliant ourselves. But you get to put in entries that you want to try and search for. So say I have Todd Baker and his social security number. Todd puts in a request to know what data we have on him, and then we're compliant to get rid of it, right? What this does is you can run a governed data query. It takes a couple seconds to execute, and then you can view the results. When I view the results, you can see a timeline of how many records were found on each date. So it looks like we've consistently found one record of Todd's name or social security number. You can see the source it's coming from. And then when you click on the entry found, it'll show you the details that were found. So in this case, Todd's name doesn't show up in this table, but his social security number does. So in this case, we now know exactly where this record is. It also happens to be in Snowflake. So in OvalEdge, we can execute an advanced job that would say, hey, go mask, encrypt, or protect this in the source system. And then we also have stewardship, custodianship, and ownership assigned, where based on your workflows at your organization, one of these people would then be responsible for responding to that delete and getting rid of that data. So with those 3 supported systems we talked about, Sharad, to answer your question, can we send something to a source system? Snowflake is one of those examples. Again, Redshift or Databricks. Now, if you have entries like for Rachel Peters, where you search for her information, we can see that this is found in a SQL server. So OvalEdge won't write back to this SQL server yet, but you do have stewardship and ownership assigned where you now know exactly where the field is. And in this case, I might have identified a data quality issue, right? For some reason, this social security number for Rachel Peters is showing up for a patient called Victor Morris. So you can identify great insight into your data and find it very specifically, and then have a way to quickly respond to these things instead of keeping a list of identified sensitive information in a spreadsheet somewhere. Any questions on that, Sharad? Or you want to?
I think this is amazing. So we were able to find the information across the systems. So whether it's in systems A or B or C, we can search through all that system and able to get it into the one central platform. And this is highly important from auditing point of view, because one of the key requirements of auditing is, hey, how many requests or DSAT requests actually came to you and how many you have served. So you can actually prove them that, look, this came up for delete, and on that day we have 100 entries of that present in our different system. On today, we have only 1 entry present or 0 entry present. Because in the law, actually, you may have to, by law, you can keep some information to them. Even though, suppose, for example, you ask to, let's say I'm running a business and customer asked to delete all my information, but they didn't pay the bill.
Right.
So I have a right to send the bill. So I need to keep that information unless I can have all the contractual obligation completed. So contractually, and I also, from other law perspective, you have to keep the bill for up to 7 years. So there are one law comes on top of another law. So you also have to configure that to make sure that that we don't delete each and every information. We delete only the information which is downstream, which is mostly in data warehouses, data lake.
Yep.
Those are the systems which is mostly used for analytics purpose, for enhancing the user journey further and further. While in the application, for example, the accounting system or something, you don't want to delete that information in the accounting system or in billing system, etc.
Right. That's great insight. And Sharad, I'm looking at the chat. We have another question that I'll go ahead and put in here. You know, we were asked, does OvalEdge help with any other regulations than GDPR? So
the answer is pretty much yes, because as I said, that the GDPR applies in European Union. There is a CCPA which applies in California, but all the resident of California, all the company who's registered in California, and then also applies to HIPAA, applies to federal privacy law, applies to variety of laws. So you can configure the way, for Argentina law, the UAE law, and they're pretty similar, like in the sense that from the conceptual perspective, they are written pretty much similar, but the obviously legal language are different. The laws are pretty simple.
Right. We have another question here, Sharad. I'll go ahead and show it before I show one more feature in the product. This question came from Adam, and it says, how customizable are the privacy options? Can you set multiple rules or groups? Right off the bat, from my perspective, it's very customizable, right? OvalEdge offers several different ways to apply a masking policy, and that masking policy has many different options on how you'd like it to visually appear. But then part of this privacy domain, you can configure whatever the privacy terms and fields are that are applicable for your organization. You have the flexibility to add those into OvalEdge. And then the features we've shown today, that AI recommendation, the searching through the governed data query, you can use that to find any information, right? Not just the example I've shown. And then the rules and groups piece, OvalEdge is a user role-based product. And so we have two different license types, and those license type allow users to have different levels of access, right? So you can ensure certain users can see information and others can't, right? If we take the Social Security example, if I have an HR role and they always need to see employee Social Security or salary information, I can make that available for their role while masking it for everybody else, or even restricting that column so that no one else could even see it except the person in that allowed role. So OvalEdge is very flexible there. Sharad, do you want to give any more color on that?
I think you already covered almost all part of it. It's pretty customizable the way you want to do it, and also that there are, like, as per the law, there are 78 different attributes which you have to find based on the GDPR CCPA law, but does not mean that those are only 78. You may be more or less. It depends upon your company. If your company does not collect your social security number, you don't have to worry about it, right? Every company do not collect social security number. Some company do, so they have to configure it. You can customize it. We provide a list of those 78 attributes. But if you want to add or delete something of that, you can do that very easily as well.
Right. Great. Thanks for that question, Adam. One more thing, if we look back at the screen, one more feature I want to show is, a part of that compliance process is that, like Sharad said, you need to know where all this data is. And then sometimes there's audits, right? And companies will be responsible for being able to say, this is everywhere this shows up, right, in all my systems. So in OvalEdge, we have this governance catalog called data classification. This specific screen is showing you what those privacy domain terms are, and you can select that domain up here to privacy. And then you can search through the tables, table columns, files, file columns, report, and report columns for everywhere data is showing up that has been given one of these privacy terms, right? If I wanted to just specifically search for CCPA or GDPR compliant fields, I'd then be able to come in here and search, okay, against my table columns, I have 4 specific columns that are showing up as compliant underneath these standards. And you can search by each classification type within each domain. So in privacy, we have HIPAA and we have CCPA, GDPR. But if I were to choose something like banking, I'd be able to come in here. And if I had that banking one that you mentioned, Sharad, that would show up here. And so you can structure your information and search by that classification based on domain of data, really easy too. So this should really help auditors be able to find specific information really quickly. You then can say select all, and then OvalEdge allows you to download this information out into a CSV, and then you could use that for reporting.
Yeah, so this is very good because as you are creating ready for audit preparation, so generally what is happening is that audit doesn't comes up. So organization what do is they hire external consultant to become auditor so that they want to make sure they are ready. So external auditor can come and they say, hey, you can show the guys, and they will say, yes, you are compliant with that. So they will ask it. Another kind of requirement for audit perspective is there that they want to make sure that where the data come from.
Right.
So you should be able to demonstrate that. Do you have a feature which can demonstrate that if I'm coming to there, and how would I make sure that this PII data coming from?
We definitely do. So in OvalEdge, we'd consider that to be data lineage, right? I have a table and I want to see where is information coming from that populates that table or that file or that report or whatever it may be. OvalEdge does do that end-to-end lineage. I can pull up a table and a basic lineage diagram really quickly. This is showing me I'm looking at a DIM customer table. That's the name. It's coming from my Superstore data warehouse. But then I can see there's several different SSIS packages that are moving information from these tables into my DIM customer table. And then I can see where that information flows out. So I can see some of the information from this table ends up on a Tableau report. And this is going to be an interactive diagram. So companies can come in here if you're more technical and you want to search for specific pointers in the code, you can go ahead and do that. Or you can see a visual level mapping of what information is in here and what's happening from point A to point B. And you can track that all the way through the downstream and upstream lineage. This is something, Sharad, that we also show on that column level lineage. So when I come in here, if I had to be responsible for showing, say, email, I could see exactly where email is coming from that's ending up in this table. So you could run an impact analysis. You could figure out all of the areas where this is going to flow to so that you can check those for sensitive information as well.
So is it I have to type manually or this is automatic?
So it can be automatic. OvalEdge supports both options. If you have a really simple stack with 2 systems and you don't need to build auto lineage, we don't run into many people that don't want auto lineage though. So our most popular hit with OvalEdge is the fact that this is an automated process. In OvalEdge, we're going to be able to support what we call auto lineage licenses on products. And so you can go ahead and tell OvalEdge, read my underlying source code and queries and then match between all of the systems I've connected to, and we'll build out that visual diagram, both on your system level, table level, all the way down to that column level.
Yeah, because from the compliance reason, they want to make sure all the PII attributes have a lineage because you are building it for everything. So you will have for everything. But for the PII, they want to make sure that it's available. So it's going to be available.
Right.
I think another question is coming up is about the data retention, if you want to put it that.
Yeah, sure.
It's a very important one.
Yeah, let's pull that up. So it says, do we have a data retention schedule in place that in line with legal and regulatory compliance?
Let me answer this very easily. So what are the data retention policies, right? And what the compliance asks you. So the compliance tells you that, hey, you can keep the data up to only 7 years or up to 5 years. After that, all the data, customers' data have to be deleted. So customer can ask you to delete the data. That's the one requirement. But the customer retention policy is something, the data retention policy is that up to that date only, don't carry me all the historic data for everybody, right? That is a very basic requirement for this. And I think that one of the area that we implement this data retention policy is using governed data query. You want to highlight, Rachel, further on that part? I think you came on mute, Rachel.
Thanks, Sharad. I meant to share my screen again and click the mute button.
Okay.
Yeah, so the governed data query feature could definitely be used from that lens, right? You can search for information. If one of your configurable fields were, say, a date field, so if I wanted to come in here and search on a date, right? I don't have an example for that ready, but if I wanted to say anything with this specific date, I could do that, click in here, give that date and find entries of that date and beyond. That would be one way to see what do I have. But it'll also just be a great resource for you. You know, I used to work in a school and we had to keep student records. I think it was something like 7 years. I could use this to look for student records that were, you know, older than 7 years, and I could go ahead and start to get rid of those fields.
Exactly. So you can search through this, but so we want to get rid of them when using the right system of record. So we can find out that where exactly the data retention policies are getting, are getting violated. And based on that, you can get rid of those policies very easily.
That's great. So I don't see any more questions in the chat. So Sharad, I want to remind our listeners that we have that resource on our website under that Learn section. I'll go ahead and share my screen again to show users where that is. But Sharad, any final comments before we wrap up today?
I think it's been pretty productive understanding of various laws and how do we use OvalEdge to understand that. I would say that if you have to understand any aspect of GDPR privacy laws and concerns, please reach out to me or download our white paper. We are always available on LinkedIn or Twitter. I'm available on Twitter and LinkedIn both. We have a product which can solve a lot of problems for the customers.
Yeah, agreed. So like Sharad said, please reach out to us. We'd be happy to answer any more questions or even show you more about the product to meet your specific use case. So I'll go ahead and wrap up today. Sharad, thanks so much for the time. Always love to learn from your perspective. And thanks everyone for joining.
Thank you.